Kevin Flynn.
Rebecca Lavoie.
Welcome back. Guess what we're doing?
It's another Readathon.
Kevin, do you feel like I've been cheating on you with Mel Barrett?
No, I have not, actually.
People love Mel.
She's great. She's bringing great perspective, and she's better than I'd be.
So smart. All right, a lot happened today in court, and we're going to cover all of it, including that fiery motion for a mistrial with prejudice, including Officer Nicholas Barros, and all of it. So let me start with a little piece of news. The defense did today submit its proposal for jury instructions. You know, both sides do that.
Yeah.
And their proposal for jury instructions includes this missing witness element for 2 witnesses that they do not intend to call. They're not going to call Brian Higgins. They're not going to call Trooper Proctor. So, and Brian Albert is also not going to be called. So they say basically, what they're basically saying is, you know, it was the Commonwealth's job to call these guys, right? They are favorable to the Commonwealth, and they were last time. And essentially, from what I understand, is you can't call a witness to impeach them, right?
Right.
That's what they would be doing if they were to call these witnesses, and they'd be opening up the door for Hank Brennan to rehabilitate them if they were to ask him a bunch of questions and then impeach them. There's like a lot of rules around it. But essentially, what this motion says is the jury should be instructed that it would have been the Commonwealth's burden to call them, and they were not called. Essentially says you heard names over and over again. You didn't see these people. It would have been on the Commonwealth to call them, so that you can consider the Commonwealth not calling them, but you can't consider what they may or may not have said.
But what about the whole thing about they are alleging, what was the term?
Third-party culprits.
Third-party culprits.
Yeah.
They don't have to bring any affirmative evidence towards that?
Well, they seem to be moving a little bit away from that right now. They've been intimating toward it, and I think they're going to be using data and medical evidence to imply third-party culprit without having to say,
it was this person or that person.
Right.
They can just leave it.
Without putting the jury in the position to decide, was it Karen or was it Brian Higgins? They're going to introduce a bunch of evidence showing that he did not die in this manner.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
So
still the prosecution's burden.
It's still 100%.
But it certainly feels a lot like you have to prove one way or the other. When you don't, you just have to have reasonable doubt.
Right.
And I feel like there seems to be a lot of doubt, even though there are some bad facts. Okay.
Right. Now, one thing I want to mention is that there's an incredibly wonderful and robust debate happening in our Facebook group. There's both a Karen Read chat, and then each week I'm posting a trial thread. And in that trial thread, there's a really robust debate. A couple of our listeners believe they've seen enough evidence to convict Karen Read based on the data presented by Aperture in particular and Ian Whiffen. And I think that is a legitimate feeling, considering that if I were a juror, I'm not sure what I'd make of that. And people are asking me, like, why are you so unsure about this data? So can I just explain that real quick?
Sure.
All right. So the event that the Commonwealth is alleging was the time of the collision based on their text stream data. That's not a quote, it's actually text stream data, is derived in time based on a series of factors that the Commonwealth's experts have determined what makes it that time. It is not tied to a time with the data, right? So they're saying this 3-point event turn occurred and this rear motion occurred at the specific time. They're working backwards from an odometer reading, and they're using other events on Waze to try to match up, okay? But it's still an assigned time. And the odometer stuff in particular, to me, is quite unreliable, because how can they know? How could anyone know how much Karen Read drove after she left 34 Fairview? How can anyone know how much Trooper Paul may have driven the car after it left 34 Fairview in his testing? So to me, that is not, it's less certain than it should be. Okay. So does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to you. It's okay. It's okay. It makes sense to me. Also, by the way, I should mention we do have a listener who's an expert in this particular type of car. I've checked with them, and they have said, I am not wrong to be doubtful of the way this data was interpreted.
Okay.
All right. So let's just leave it there. Today, we began with the continuation of Dr. Marie Russell's cross-examination. Do you remember who Dr. Marie Russell is?
Yeah, Bite Mommy.
That's right. Yesterday, Hank Brennan was very solicitous and polite with Dr. Marie Russell.
Because she'd been voir dired, I think, on 2 occasions, right? And, and she testified in the first trial, and the prosecution wasn't Hank, but the prosecution went at her hard.
Right.
And he actually had a chance to confront her in an earlier proceeding. So, yeah, they tend to go at her pretty hard.
And so yesterday, though, I was surprised at his demeanor. She tried to be respectful. He wasn't, but he tried. Today, it was clear this morning someone put a bag of dicks in his Cheerios because he was a big giant dick to her today.
Okay. Got the dick juice going, all right.
Yeah, he drank a big sip of dick juice. So the problem with his being aggressive with her, his whole thing was there are no published standards to which you can assert that this is a dog bite. Okay. And she said, there's no published standards to which you can assert that a lot of wounds are anything. There's no public standards about some kinds of cancers. There's no public, it's just like you learn from doing what I do for a really long time, and you learn to see it when you see it. And this is a pattern.
Right.
Then he took the pattern off the table and asked her to opine on every single individual mark on John's arm. Does this line have to be a dog bite? And she was like, no, but with everything else, it is. That was essentially the gist of it. Yeah. What do you think about that?
I was I want to say frustrated. I found the cross-examination to be a little tedious because it certainly felt a little incoherent about where he was going. And I felt like perhaps that was by design, that he's trying to set her up in some kind of trap where she opines on one thing and maybe he poses it as a hypothetical, and then a few minutes later, because at one point he was like, but you just said.
Right.
And I think also that he's trying to set her up, trying to create some doubt against their other expert witness.
Correct.
It sounds like she's like, you're the only one, right? So basically setting up that you guys can't agree on that.
Right.
So one of you's got to be wrong. Who does the jury not believe?
He did that again today with a report from this guy, Dr. Walsh at ARCA, who's not going to be testifying. He's not one of the ARCA witnesses, but he has a report that's part of the ARCA report. And basically he's like, these injuries can't be determined, like they're not consistent with anything. And he's like, well, what does that say to you? And she said, it says that a biomechanic says that it's not consistent with anything. So he is trying to do that. The other thing that she did today that was different was because he lied in court yesterday. You know about his lie in court, right?
No, tell me about his lie in court.
Yesterday, he was questioning her about Dr. Irini Scorti-Bello's autopsy report. And he was asking her questions about conclusions made by the medical examiner in that report. And she kept saying, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. I don't remember that. And then finally, when he's asked to present the report to the court, he's like, oh, maybe it wasn't in the report. Maybe it was in her testimony. So he was lying. This is what he does. He's very good at getting witnesses to, it appears as though they're admitting to a lie that doesn't exist. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not good faith.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of like, I feel like what happened with the DNA comments. So do you want to unpack that?
Well, let me just finish what I was
sure.
Let me just finish what I was saying here. So today, Dr. Russell said every single time he would mention her prior testimony report, she would say, can I please see the report? And he was like, who told you to ask that? Who told you that you should be asking for a copy of the report? And she was like, Mr. Alessi told me. And he's like, did you guys, you're not supposed to talk about the case. She's like, we didn't talk about specifically the case. He just said I could do that. When did he say that? This morning in the car on the way to the, like, she has no guile. She's just like saying what happened, and he's going at her as if there's something nefarious there, which there is not. So
I think it's really rich that this prosecution would say, you can't talk to witnesses like that. You can't consult with the other attorneys. That's somewhat wrong. When the defense literally put a motion asking them to knock it the fuck off.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, do you think...
He tells on himself.
He tells on himself. Every accusation is a confession.
That's right. So he kept confronting her as he does with other evidence in the case. Unfortunately, Marie Russell is very good at answering these questions. So for instance, he cross-examined her about the taillight being in the shirt stuff, and she then got the chance to explain why these wounds could not have been caused by a taillight. He talked about the false, I believe, I hit him claim. You know, in the videos, she said, could I have hit him? Could I have hit him? And then she had a chance to talk about what she calls an acute grief reaction. When people who are involved in incidents like this make statements that are irrational or don't make sense or feel a heightened sense of guilt or upset at what happened. And she sees that in the emergency room, quote, all the time. So she even got a chance to explain why Karen said in that interview, you know, could I have hit him? Could I have hit him? In a way that I've never heard anyone say before.
Right.
And then Hank Brennan brought up, as you mentioned, did you know there was DNA testing on the shirt? Huge objection. Long sidebar situation. Jury was sent out of the room. And then Alessi got up and was extremely angry.
Attorney Brennan, just with regard to Dr. Russell, in open court in front of the jury, used the concept of DNA in this case. He has introduced it and brought it in for the very first time in front of the jury. He has done so intentionally. He intentionally brought up DNA. Based upon that intentional mention, the defense moves strongly, vigorously for a mistrial with prejudice. A mistrial with prejudice.
I saw some clips where people around were startled because he's passionate, but he doesn't usually raise his voice, right?
He usually raises his voice more in I can't believe this is happening kind of situation, not in a angry fist pounding. So he was arguing for a mistrial with prejudice. What does with prejudice mean?
Well, it means that they can't refile. Right. They might, dismiss without prejudice, and then they're free to refile the charges and try her a third time. Right.
So his issue here, and Colin Miller has a wonderful Twitter thread about it that I will link in the show notes to this, about why he brought this up as an issue and why it was a hard standard to reach, but he's not necessarily wrong to raise it because it's a great issue on appeal, is that DNA testing of John O'Keefe's clothing, skin, etc. was never brought into evidence by the prosecution in this case. They had a DNA person last time. They did not bring that person in this time. So now he's presenting her with evidence where there's no foundation for it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does because because they have rested their case.
Right.
So there's no more evidence coming in. So you can't keep throwing. You can't argue facts that aren't in evidence.
And you can't bring a rebuttal witness for facts that are... So even if they brought in their rebuttal witness, Dr. Crosby, after her, that guy can't testify about DNA because that's not in evidence.
Yeah.
So this is a huge argument. He also talked about chain of custody stuff and everything else. She took a 30-minute recess to consider whether... Of course, there was an argument from Hank on this.
Yeah. You mean she took 3 minutes to consider?
30.
And took 22 minutes to check her stocks on her...
Drink out of her giant Stanley Cup.
Play Candy Crush. I don't know. Yeah.
Right. So basically,
refillers.
One thing I want to mention that Alessi said as part of his argument is that you can't put that genie back in the bottle. Once he mentions DNA testing, that's irrevocable. That's not curable with a jury instruction. So Colin Miller says the bar for this is interesting. The test is to whether, one, the prosecutor acted in bad faith. I believe that he did, but that's hard to prove. And two, a curative instruction to jurors to ignore the reference would be insufficient to cure the prejudice caused. So that's the standard, okay? Clearly, the bad faith part is a hard part to prove. So Cannoni came back and very cavalierly denied the mistrial, saying that Karen Read's rights were, quote, safe. Because this was a big, civil rights question. All right. So then, cross-examination continues. Hank Brennan gave Dr. Russell basically an open plan to discuss whether there might not be dog DNA on a swab from John O'Keefe. And she just sat there. She explained reasonable doubt. And then she said, none of this matters because my findings are that a dog bit him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So seeing this picture of this tail light doesn't change your opinion at all? No.
Did he ask again whether or not it could possibly be freckles?
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't go there again?
No, he didn't.
Did you know that he's Irish?
No, but you'll be happy to hear that Lividity did come in yesterday on her direct examination. I know that you're a big fan of
I love the Lividity.
I know you do. You don't love John.
Liva Mortis.
To be fair, you're not being gross. You love that kind of evidence because you think that evidence is compelling, right?
Right.
All right. So, again, by the way, he also talked about the microscopic pieces of plastic in John O'Keefe's shirt, which I will again say has not been proven or verified in court. There was plastic in the envelope with the clothes, okay? Anyway.
There's a big scraper. And scraped it right off.
And also poured the stuff from the envelope in the same container.
Right. And can I just were they able to scientifically match that plastic with the plastic on the car?
It's unclear. It's consistent with, but not scientifically matched with.
Okay.
All right. So Hank Brennan then in his recross wanted to inquire about scope. So... then he talked about a paper that she read to sort of shape her work. It was none of that was effective. Then she was shown, by the way, on her redirect, that video of Welcher throwing himself on the car with his arm covering it in blue paint.
All that proved to me was that if there was wet paint on the car, you would have got it all over your sleeve.
Right, and she asserted that if a car had hit somebody that way, it would have caused potential fractures, but definitely deep bruising. And the autopsy, which Brennan brought up, apparently Irina Scorbello pulled back all of John O'Keefe's skin on his legs and so forth, and there was no hematoma. And Hank Brennan was like, don't you prescribe ice when there's bruises? Couldn't the snow have been like ice? She's like, no, because it's the immediate cold that keeps swelling from happening, not a slow cold. All right. So then she mentioned that anything that happened to him was not consistent with a car backing up at 24 miles an hour. Hank lost his shit. Where'd you get 24 miles per hour from? She's like, I don't remember. He said, shouldn't you know where you remember that from? He's like, that you shouldn't your opinions be based on facts that you know. And she's like, sure. The bottom line is he's the one who's been saying 24 miles per hour over and over again. Granted, she's not supposed to have heard that, but I'm certain it was in a report that was sent to her.
Yeah.
All right. So here's a jury check from Jessica Machado, problematic reporter who happened to be in the courtroom during jury checks today. Juror 1, looking at a screen. Juror 2, arms crossed with an annoyed look. Juror 3, looking extremely bored. Juror 4, head going back and forth between the parties. Juror 5.
This is during cross.
Yes.
Yeah.
Looking at the notes of the juror on this side of him. Number 6, I can't see this juror. Number 7, taking notes. Number 8, staring at Karen Reed. Number 9, note taking. 10, looking at notes. 11, looking at Alessi. 12, looking across the room. 13, expressionless and void of emotion. I love this jury check. Anyway, it goes on like that. It doesn't sound like people were riveted, in other words. So that was basically the gist of the...
making testimony boring is also a way to lessen the impact of a witness.
Yes.
If they just kind of remember, a big wow is something that they'll remember, but also if they were, if they dragged it out and became bored, then, there were a couple of boring witnesses for the prosecution, right?
Sure.
Who were they? Yeah, see, there's my point. Okay, yeah.
All the lab people.
All the lab people.
Boring.
Yeah, all right.
So one thing that Brennan had done on Cross was there was all these scholarly articles, and they were highlighted, the parts that she was going to read, and he said, who highlighted those? And she said, Mr. Alessi did. On redirect, Alessi was like, didn't I highlight those parts because you couldn't highlight them because you didn't bring a highlighter with you from California? Yes. So it's like all his stuff is just sort of dumb.
Right.
All right. Next witness of the day, final witness of the day, Nicholas Barrows. Do you remember who Nicholas Barrows is?
He is a police officer from a nearby town who responded to one of the scenes, right? And he's the one who said that when he saw Karen Reed's taillight, there was a small hole in it. It was not broken out in the way that it has been presented. Right.
So he's been a Dighton cop since 2011. He's a sergeant. And he is so nice. He established he's totally independent. He's a trained observer. He had 20 minutes to stand behind Karen's car in the driveway and her parents' driveway. And when asked, did the taillight look like this? And they put up the picture of it in Canton. He said, absolutely not. What he described was a missing piece toward the right of the back of the taillight shaped like a dollar bill, about the size of a dollar bill. And then they showed a video of the car being put on the flatbed and they stopped it at that still where the taillight lights up. And it very clearly matches him with a dollar bill missing. The problem is Hank Alessi, for everyone who says he's not, is a very effective cross-examiner. And he essentially got Barrows to admit that he doesn't exactly remember his testimony in the last trial, which was a year ago. So he's like, doesn't that mean you have a memory issue around this case? And he said he had to admit he did because Hank brought him there. Hank is very good at building.
Is it a false memory?
Right.
Did he just somebody told him later, he said, oh, yes, I had a false memory and it wasn't malicious.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was really tough. I mean, Nick Barrows looked like he felt bad about what he was saying, which isn't great because it looks like he hopes to say one thing and is saying another. You know what I mean? That being said, I believe him. He is incredibly believable. He showed a bunch of pictures of the car before when it was in the driveway of One Meadows, and they show the dash cam. Yeah. The snow all over the back of the car. He's like, is this consistent with what you saw in the driveway? Hank is saying it looks like Canton, and he's saying, no, that is consistent with what I saw in the driveway. And it's confusing because there's snow all over the car. But anyway, Brennan tried to nail him on meeting with the defense before this trial. And he's like, yeah, I went to their hotel. I met with Mr. Jackson, and we talked about how I could be subpoenaed and when my vacation time was. That's all you talked about in that conference room at the hotel. Yes. It's very clear that he's trying to get to something. He picks. And when he knows he has something, he's very good at holding on to it. Yeah. The memory thing was this time. So anyway, Barrows is done. I don't know what the jury will make of him because he was so believable, but then very susceptible to these memory questions. Yeah.
Yeah. He sounds human.
He's extremely human.
How does he compare to Officer Dever?
Oh, God. He didn't claim any false memories created in good faith. He didn't claim any of that. What did you think of that testimony yesterday, since we have a few more minutes?
Oh, well, I thought that was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. She came across as petulant. At first, I thought she was fairly strong, but she seemed, I have no idea why I'm here. Really? You have no fucking idea why you're there. The police commissioner called you into your office. You had phone calls with the defense. You had visits from the FBI, and she said FBI on the stand, which I caught. But you have no idea why you might be here. And it's just, it's crazy. And as you guys pointed out yesterday, I was like, okay, if you want to say, I saw this at this time, and they show you a timeline that said, no, could have been you weren't there, you jump to the idea like, oh, no, I must have imagined the whole thing, as opposed to maybe you saw that a different day.
Or
maybe that's the part that you are not getting, because what you have imagined is so vivid that you saw your boss and this guy going to evidence, and this memory made you uncomfortable because not only was he just there, he was there for a long time, which seems like a long memory to fabricate.
Right.
And then you get called to see. I feel like they could have gone a little deeper on her with this.
It was before Higgins was in the frame, too.
Before Higgins was in the frame.
Yeah.
And it's like, the commissioner calls you to remind you that a Boston cop was killed. And the defense is going to be saying that another Boston cop is responsible. So you, Boston cop, you do the right thing. Come on. If you, dear listener, got pulled into the office of the CEO of where you work, and they just said, do the right thing, what the fuck do you think that means?
It doesn't mean be like Silkwood. It means
it's clear as mud.
Get in line. Okay, so I just want to say one last thing that someone said on Twitter that I think is very astute.
Yeah.
She says that payroll records show that that shift ended at 3:45. She was not asked when her next shift started. So she earlier testified that she was an early evening to early morning, like 4 to 1 or whatever. There's a very good possibility that her overtime ended then, and then she stayed at work and clocked in for her regular shift, because cops are very, they're supposed to be really good about clocking overtime versus regular time. So anyway, they also didn't ask her, did you stay around, or could it have been, they didn't ask her those questions.
Yeah.
So one thing I forgot to ask you was, did you see the moment where Hank Brennan asked Marie Russell about whether or not she had memory issues and her reaction?
Oh my God, that was crazy. You have any memory issues?
No.
The gasp heard round the world.
Did everybody? Did other people gasp?
I don't know. Her gasp was so loud that I think it would have covered up anybody else gasping.
Yeah.
That's some ageist bullshit right there.
It is, and certainly what the implication, whether or not that was his implication, that was her inference, and I think a lot of people saw that as perhaps a low blow. What other witnesses did he say, do you have a memory problem?
Well, he said it later to Barrows,
but did he say it that way?
No. And she was not happy about it.
No.
So at the end of the day, after Barrows was let go, there was a long sidebar about 3 issues that the prosecution apparently has with the next 2 witnesses, or one of the next 2 witnesses that they're going to bring. The next 2 witnesses are Karina Kolakithis and Lucky Loughran.
Okay.
Now, Turtle Boy said this one thing, which I think, like I said, I have doubts about Turtle Boy, a person, less doubts about his reporting. He said that sources reported to him that Karina Kolakithis, who was called by the Commonwealth last time, she'll testify with a lawyer present that Jennifer McCabe told her there was ring footage of John O'Keefe being hit by a car in an attempt to turn her against Karen Read. So apparently the prosecution
this ring doesn't exist.
And the prosecution wants all these discovery documents from them. Of course, they want everything. They don't want to be surprised in any way. But as we know, WZBZ reported on February 1st, after their visit for lunch to D&E Pizza, they said that an I-Team source had told them there was ring camera video of Karen Read hitting John O'Keefe.
Right. And there was a thing that you were involved with, Rebecca, about they never corrected or retracted that article online or in any way indicated.
They've added a thing to the top that says on TV, they said an original version of this article was transcribed wrong from the TV report. which I saw. I remember seeing. I don't believe it was transcribed.
Well,
wrong.
we kept saying, our assumption was that the false story about there being Ring camera footage was leaked by the police.
That's what I believed before.
In order to get her to take a plea and decide, oh, well, okay, there's because that is a big cop tactic, whether they have video or not. We have it on video. Oh, well, I must have done it then. But from those text messages that we saw earlier in the trial, where there were some of the Mick Alberts in the pizza place when the reporters came in. They planted that story. It wasn't the cops. It was the
Chris Albert.
They were the source for that. And the TV station never came back till months and months later to correct that.
Barely correct it.
And it says it right there. The next text message that we heard was that if she takes a plea, this all goes away.
That's right.
And if she doesn't, this becomes problematic, a circus, something like that. That whole thing was designed to get Karen Read to think she is on video doing this.
I totally agree.
And get her to just shut up and take the plea.
That's right.
And that shows a lot of
consciousness of guilt. Do you think it would be fair game for WBZ to report that out? I know that you don't betray sources as a journalist, right?
Yeah.
But isn't it a story that potentially a source tried to plant a story to manipulate the outcome of the case?
Yeah, I mean,
it's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
Journalistically, it's a tough one.
It's a tough one. I mean, I just think that if you know the story is unsafe, if you know that you can't back it up, you need to correct it in one way. That means you can do a clarification, you can do a correction, or you can do a retraction. And a retraction is the nuclear bomb, and it says this never should have been published.
That's right.
It's the whole thing needs to come down. I don't know what the other parts of it were, but certainly the idea that that information came from people who have been implicated as alternative suspects and that evidence never existed was intentionally planted to mislead the press and the public. I think that's newsworthy, and I think that they failed to do their job.
I agree. All right, Kevin.
I got the hot take this time. What can I say?
I love that. So tomorrow we're gonna have Karina Kolakithis, I guess, as long as Judge Canoni lets her testify, and our old friend Lucky Loughran. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you so much for joining me on the Readathon today. I was so angry today, and seeing you has helped calm me down.
All right.
Thanks, Kevin.
Partners in Crime Media.